to the belt star we call Mintaka. And really there's two villages up there, Oribe and Haute-Villa, and these correspond, and Mintaka is a double star, so there's this duality there of Mintaka, the double star, corresponding to these two villages on what is called Third Mesa, which is the westernmost mesa. There's a map on my website that listeners can go to and look at, which makes it a lot clearer, because I can describe the villages and so forth and how they correspond. But once you see the map, it's very, very clear. You could go to my website. It's theorionzone.com. And then click on the maps link. You can pull up 3 different maps that I've provided for you, and you can see the correlation real easily there. And of course, the maps are in the book, which is the second edition of which is coming out in a couple of weeks.
Excellent.
Adventures Unlimited Press.
So is it a lot of added information or updated or what?
The second edition is pretty much like the first. I've added an index and a bibliography, but there are a lot of photographs in the book. There are about over 50 photographs and diagrams and star charts. I went around to a lot of petroglyphs in the area, in this region, and photographed the petroglyphs of various things like entities that don't quite look human. They look rather insectoid. And the Hopi talk about the ant people, which we can do a little later.
Absolutely, and sure. And I'm looking at
this template or this pattern was established beginning around 1050 A.D. And it took until about 1300 A.D. for them to finish this pattern. Really, the first star that was established in the pattern was the star Thyfe, which corresponds to Canyon de Chelly National Monument. And these are all places you can go to today and look at. And see the ruins that they've established.
And I will have Gary. I will have this link in connection to our this program, so people will be able to look at these maps as we go along here. And this is very interesting, as you say, because this obviously creates the pattern of, as you say, of the Orion constellation. And I mean, if we are to kind of get to the root of this, I mean, what do you think is the main purpose for why they did this? Is this kind of a ritual or to you know?
Well, I think that they wanted to honor this particular god, Masao. Who was with them at the beginning of the migrations and accompanied them, and more or less told them where to stop and build villages. So, Masao was there, and he directed the establishment of this pattern, and the Hopi were just following with his will, and they wanted to honor this god. And this god is not a comfortable god. It's a rather frightening deity, really. If you look at the god, artists have made renditions of what the god looks like. As I said before, it looks a lot like an extraterrestrial gray. Now, I'm not saying that right off that the Hopi came from the stars or whatever, but I do have some information in the book that the Hopi do have a kind of a celestial link.
Yeah. Indeed.
And Masao is one of these strong links. The underworld, of course, can be the world of the stars as well. As above, so below.
Yeah.
But I was just amazed at how exact the constellation is to the pattern that the Hopi established over a 250-year period.
So do you think that that there is a guiding hand, I guess? Could it be extraterrestrial guiding? Because there are a lot of other correlation, of course, around the Earth to other civilizations who have been talking about that there is another kind of this master race or quote gods that are telling the people, I guess more primitive. I don't know in this case if the Hopi back then were primitive in that sense, or if they were kind of connected to this. There is a main thesis that there was a more advanced ancient culture, and do you know if the Hopi kind of connects with this in any way?
Well, I'm not sure whether it was a physical extraterrestrial connection, or in the sense of it was an interdimensional being, or a god in the sense of the Greek gods were. I guess you could theorize that they were extraterrestrial, but
it's
I guess it's your point of view. I try not to stress the ET connection too strongly. I have evidence in the book of, for instance, the Hopi and what they call flying shields.
Yeah.
Patuvota is the term that they use. And these flying shields were piloted by the Kachinas that I mentioned earlier, these spirit messengers that came down to the people and interacted with the people. In fact, there are legends among the Hopi saying that the Kachinas came down and mated with some of the Hopi women. And this sounds a lot like the abduction phenomenon and the interbreeding that we hear about in terms of the ETs and contemporary sense of it. So the Hopi go way back and then talking about these Kachinas and how they came down to the people and they were a positive force, teaching the people various ways to grow crops and so forth, and giving them spiritual guidance. There's an interesting legend about a great flood in the Hopi mythology. And when the flood was coming towards the village, everybody just kind of scattered and ran off, and these two little children were left kind of stranded. And apparently, one of these Kachinas came down in a flying shield and encountered these two children and took the children up in this flying shield and saved them from this great flood that was engulfing the village. They were described as, in kind of an interesting way, they were described as having their clothing had like icicles on it. And to a culture, to an ancient culture that wasn't familiar with metallic material, this might be a way that a culture would describe a metal. It looked like icicles on their clothing. It's very shiny and so forth. But this Kachina took them way up in the sky and fed them, and then finally deposited them down where the parents had moved to. And the Kachina said that he would come again in their dreams to instruct them on the way to live a spiritual life. The Kachinas and the flying shields are a big part of Hopi culture, and I guess they don't have as much trouble as some people today have with the UFO phenomenon.
Interesting, yeah. And I remember I saw a TV documentary a while back. It ran on Swedish television, actually, and there were a representative, I guess, from the Hopi speaking in that documentary, and he, of course, talked about the, I guess, rather famous, more idea of the Hopi prophecy. I mean, that's just a name for it, and I bet they have a lot of prophecies, but kind of the main prophecy. And he, if I remember correctly, he talked about something named the Blue Kachina, about a coming time, I guess. Is this something that you go into in the book?
Well, I go a little bit into Hopi prophecy. The blue star Kachina is prophesized to dance at the end of the fourth world. See, the Hopi consider that we are now living in the fourth world.
Yeah.
There were 3 previous worlds that were created and destroyed. The first world was created and then destroyed by fire, which some people think it might be fire from the sky, an asteroid, or it might be fire in the earth, volcanism. And then the second world was created and then destroyed by ice. Okay.
Yeah.
So this might be the Ice Age.
Of course.
That got the second world, and the reason why these were created and destroyed was simply because the spirituality had just had waned, and the people were living evil lives, and it was time for the world to end. And the third world was destroyed by a flood, a great flood, which I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And now we're living at the end of the fourth world. Many Hopi elders believe that this is kind of the end. The Hopi have predicted a lot of things that happened in the 20th century. They predicted horseless carriages running on black ribbons, which is the automobiles on the asphalt. They predicted people talking through cobwebs.
Yep.
The telephone lines.
Yeah.
They predicted what they called a gourd of ashes falling on the earth, which a lot of people think were the atomic explosion at Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
In fact, speaking of that, the Hopi have a symbology of both the swastika and the Maltese cross. At the end time, a figure called Pahana, which was there with Masao at the beginning, will return, and this figure is sort of corresponds to Quetzalcoatl of the Aztecs. But Pahana will return with these 2 helpers, and the one helper will have a swastika and a Maltese cross, and the other helper will have a rising sun. And these are interpreted as being the First World War and the Second World War, the symbols used during these 2 world wars.
Yeah. So
the Hopi, have predicted a lot of this stuff that has happened in the 20th century, and the amount of earth changes and imbalances in the earth are all signs of the ending of the fourth world. The earthquakes that we're seeing, the tsunamis, and so forth, is all part of the Hopi prophecy that we're living out of balance with the earth, and we're destroying the earth, and the fourth world eventually will end, and the fifth world will commence. Now, whether or not it's going to be 2012, as the Maya believe, I'm not sure. But the Hopi and the Maya are very close. They had a lot of trade relations through the centuries. There are a lot of similarities in the two cultures. In fact, they found burials in Arizona here with parrots that originated in southern Mexico and Central America. So there was a vast trade network between the two cultures. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Hopi and the Maya shared this information about the ending of the age.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting, and I remember also